Sarah Matthews woke to sunlight slipping through the blinds, painting the bedroom in a soft, golden hue. Birds chirped outside, and for a fleeting moment, everything felt perfectly normal. She stretched and glanced over at the empty side of the bed. "Daniel?" she called, her voice breaking the quiet. No answer. Her brow furrowed. He should have been up by now, heading to the office like every other Thursday. She swung her legs off the bed, her feet touching the cold hardwood floor, and padded toward the kitchen. The house smelled faintly of coffee, and the mug Daniel always used sat on the counter, half full. The briefcase he carried to work every day rested beside the front door. Nothing seemed disturbed, nothing seemed unusual, yet something deep inside her told her that this calm was deceiving. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up her phone. A glance at the screen showed no messages from him, no missed calls, not even a running late text. She dialed his number, straight to voicemail. Maybe he left early, she murmured to herself, though the rational part of her brain knew it didn't fit. Daniel never left early without telling her. Minutes later, Sarah's unease turned to dread. She called a few of Daniel's colleagues. Still nothing. Each call ended the same way. No one had seen him that morning. No one knew where he was. She felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. By the time the police arrived, Sarah's anxiety had taken full control. She explained the situation as calmly as she could, describing Daniel's morning routine, the locked house, the untouched briefcase. The officer took notes carefully, but gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't panic just yet," he said. "Sometimes people just need space. Maybe he went somewhere without telling anyone." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister had occurred. She scanned the living room, kitchen, and hallway again. Everything appeared normal, yet she couldn't stop noticing the details. A faint scuff on the floor near the front door, a chair slightly out of place, a shadow that seemed too dark in the corner of the kitchen. As the afternoon stretched on, Sarah decided to check the basement. Daniel had always kept it locked, citing unfinished projects as the reason. Today, the door wasn't fully shut. A chill ran down her spine as she pushed it open. The basement smelled of damp concrete and dust. Old boxes were stacked haphazardly along the walls, and the single bare bulb cast long, eerie shadows. Sarah's heart raced as she ran her fingers along the old wooden door at the back of the room. Scratches marred the edges of the handle, something she had never noticed before. "Probably just Daniel moving boxes," she whispered, trying to convince herself. Still, she could not ignore the faint sound of scraping, almost like nails against wood. She froze. The sound stopped. She waited. Nothing. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Returning upstairs, Sarah attempted to distract herself by calling Daniel's friends, hoping one of them might know something. But every answer was the same: confusion, uncertainty, averted eyes. No one had heard from him. As evening fell, Sarah sat on the couch staring at the staircase leading to the basement. Every creak of the floorboards above felt amplified in the silence. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt watched. She tried to remember the last time Daniel had seemed worried or secretive. There had been small signs, late nights on his laptop, hushed phone calls, but nothing alarming, or so she thought. Now, every little thing seemed suspicious. Every smile, every glance, every gesture that had seemed ordinary might have been hiding something. Her eyes drifted to the old key taped under the kitchen drawer, a key Daniel had never mentioned. Her hands shook as she held it, her mind racing. Could it belong to the basement door or something else? Hours passed. Sarah couldn't sleep. She paced the living room, imagining all the possibilities: an accident, a sudden illness, even the unthinkable. She called the police again, but there were no new leads. They suggested staying put, waiting for more information. But how could she wait when the answer seemed right beneath her feet? Finally, unable to resist, she approached the basement once more. The light from the small bulb flickered as if warning her to stay away. She descended the creaking stairs, her heart pounding louder with each step. At the bottom, she noticed a faint glow emanating from the far corner. Boxes lay scattered, revealing a small door she had never seen before. It was old, wooden, and clearly meant to remain hidden. A sense of foreboding filled her. Whatever was behind that door, Daniel had wanted kept secret. With shaking hands, Sarah inserted the key. The lock clicked open. The door creaked as it swung inward. Inside, she saw nothing at first, just darkness, a musty smell, and silence that pressed against her ears. Then she saw the notebook. Its leather cover was cracked and worn, pages yellowed with age. She picked it up. The handwriting inside was unmistakably Daniel's, scrawled, urgent, desperate. The first entry read, "They're watching. I don't know who I can trust anymore. If something happens to me, this must be found. The truth is down here, and it's worse than I feared." A cold shiver ran down Sarah's spine. She dropped the notebook, her mind racing. What truth? What had Daniel uncovered? And who or what was watching? Outside, the wind howled through the trees, rattling the windows. Sarah felt suddenly small, trapped, as though the house itself had turned against her. She realized that the quiet morning she had woken to was a lie. The calm masked something dark, something terrifying lurking just below the surface of her ordinary life. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from an unknown number. "Stop looking, or next time it won't just be him." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The stakes had just escalated beyond disappearance. Someone was warning her, and she was now part of whatever nightmare Daniel had uncovered. Clutching the notebook to her chest, Sarah realized that this was only the beginning. The basement held secrets, the kind that could shatter lives, and she was about to descend even deeper into a world she never knew existed. Her pulse thundered, her hands trembling, but a spark of resolve lit within her. She had to know. She had to find Daniel, no matter the cost. And somewhere in the shadows, someone or something was watching. The house felt different after that first night. Shadows seemed longer, the air heavier, almost as if it were holding its breath. Sarah Matthews didn't sleep. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's notebook, its urgent scrawl repeating itself in her mind. "The truth is down here, and it's worse than I feared." Morning arrived gray and cold, and Sarah knew she couldn't waste another day. She had to go back to the basement. If Daniel had hidden something, if he had uncovered a secret dangerous enough to vanish him, she needed to know what it was. Her hands shook as she descended the stairs, flashlight in one hand, the leather-bound notebook pressed against her chest with the other. Dust floated in the beam of light, and the familiar metallic smell, like iron and old concrete, filled her nostrils. The basement, already sinister in her imagination, felt alive now. The small, hidden door at the far corner beckoned. She crouched, inserted the key, and turned the lock. The creak of the door seemed louder than ever, echoing against the concrete walls. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The space was cramped, dark, and smelled faintly of mildew. Yet amid the darkness, her light caught something glinting, a series of small boxes stacked haphazardly. She moved closer and discovered an array of Daniel's belongings, notebooks, folders, photographs, and old digital storage devices. The handwriting in the notebooks was frantic, almost illegible, filled with observations, warnings, and calculations. Then she saw it, a small camera perched atop a shelf, aimed directly at the hidden space. Her stomach twisted. Daniel hadn't just stored evidence here, he had been recording it, documenting it. She picked up the camera and found a memory card inside. She plugged it into her laptop upstairs and began to play. Her breath caught as images appeared. Daniel meeting men she didn't recognize, speaking in hushed, tense tones about money, deliveries, and what they were hiding. One clip showed Daniel pointing to documents and whispering, "You can't let this get out." A chill ran down her spine. Someone, or multiple people, knew Daniel had discovered something, someone dangerous. Her heart pounded, and then she noticed a detail that made her blood run cold. One of the men in the footage was standing in the shadows behind Daniel, a faint outline, almost imperceptible but unmistakable. Someone had been following him, watching him, perhaps even inside their own home. Before she could process the footage fully, her phone buzzed again, another message from the unknown number. "Leave it alone, or it will be your turn next." Her hands tightened around the phone. Panic clawed at her chest, but Sarah forced herself to think. She couldn't stop now, not when Daniel's life, and perhaps her own, were at stake. Hours passed as she examined more evidence. Folders contained detailed accounts of illegal dealings, transactions, photographs, even blackmail notes. Daniel had been investigating a local criminal network that no one suspected. Influential men and women, neighbors, businessmen, even officials. Then she noticed something else. The basement floor itself seemed off. A section of the concrete near the back wall was slightly raised. She pressed on it, and it moved slightly under her fingers. With renewed urgency, she pushed the slab aside, revealing a narrow crawl space just big enough to crawl into. Her flashlight revealed only darkness, but the air was cold and carried the faint, unmistakable smell of blood. Sarah swallowed hard, forcing herself to crawl inside. The space extended further than she expected, and at the far end she found a small wooden chest. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were personal items of Daniel's, shirts, a watch, a wallet, and beneath them, a folded piece of paper, stained and worn. She unfolded it carefully. In Daniel's handwriting, "If you are reading this, I am no longer safe. They know I am digging too deep. The basement holds the evidence, but also the danger. Someone is watching. Do not trust anyone. Find the hidden passage behind the old shelving. It is the only way to survive if they come." Her head spun. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Daniel hadn't disappeared voluntarily. He had been taken, or at the very least, was being hunted. A sudden noise made her jump. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoed from the stairs. Someone was descending. Her flashlight beam trembled as she shined it toward the basement door. No one was there. The footsteps continued, and the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally. She ducked into the crawl space, pressing herself against the cold concrete wall. Her breath came in shallow gasps as the intruder moved around, seemingly searching. The air felt suffocating, the darkness pressing on her chest. Every instinct screamed, "Don't make a sound." Time stretched unbearably, but eventually the footsteps receded. She waited several more minutes before daring to emerge. Her mind raced. Whoever was watching Daniel, whoever had taken Daniel, was still here, watching, waiting, and now she was on their radar too. Determined, she decided she needed more than just the hidden crawl space. There had to be something she was missing. She returned to the main basement area and began inspecting every box, every shelf, every nook. Finally, behind a stack of old storage boxes, she found it, a panel in the wall she hadn't noticed before. Dusty, worn, almost blending perfectly with the concrete. Her fingers traced the edges and found a latch. With a deep breath, she pulled it open. Inside was a narrow vertical shaft, dark and foreboding. The smell was stronger here, iron and decay mingling with damp concrete. It was clear someone had been confined here. She could see scratches along the walls, long, frantic marks, as if someone had tried desperately to claw their way out. Her stomach turned. Could this be where Daniel had been held, or someone else before him? The thought was too terrible to dwell on. She pressed on, determined to understand. Hours later, exhausted and shaken, Sarah emerged from the basement into the fading afternoon light. Her hands were covered in dust, her clothes smeared with grime, but in her eyes burned a new resolve. She had a plan. She would find Daniel, she would uncover the full truth, and she would make whoever was responsible pay. But as she closed the basement door behind her, a shadow moved just beyond the window, watching, patient, waiting. Sarah didn't see it, but it didn't matter. Whoever had taken Daniel, and whoever was still guarding the secrets in that basement, knew she was no longer an outsider. She was involved now, and they would not let her walk away. Sarah Matthews had always thought of her house as a safe place. Now even the walls seemed hostile. Every shadow, every creak of the floorboards made her jump. After hours of searching the basement, examining the crawl space, and poring over Daniel's notes and videos, one terrifying truth had become clear. Daniel hadn't disappeared by accident. Someone had taken him. And worse, that someone was powerful, patient, and unafraid. Her first instinct was fear. The second was determination. She could not sit idly while Daniel was trapped somewhere, possibly injured, possibly worse. She had to find him. Using clues from Daniel's journals, she pieced together fragments of his last days before the disappearance. He had been tracking a criminal network operating in their town, a network so well hidden that most people wouldn't suspect a thing. The logs described deliveries, meetings, and abandoned warehouses, even lists of people under surveillance. Daniel had been planning to expose them, to hand the evidence to the authorities, but he must have gotten too close. And then it hit her. The basement itself wasn't just a storage space. It was a hub, a secret place Daniel used to collect and protect proof of the crimes. But now that she had been in it, the criminals might know she was on to them. She shivered. Whoever was watching wouldn't hesitate to come after her. That night, the sense of being observed became overwhelming. She locked every door, closed every blind, but it didn't matter. Footsteps on the porch, the faint scratching at the windows, even the sound of the wind seemed orchestrated, as if guiding her fear. The unknown watchers were sending a message. They were still here, and they knew she had seen too much. Sarah's resolve hardened. She could not back down. She returned to the basement, flashlight in hand, heart racing. This time she knew she had to go further, to push past her fear. She inspected the hidden crawl space again, this time moving the old shelving to find the panel Daniel had mentioned in his diary. Her hand shook as she pried it open. The space beyond was narrow, suffocating, and smelled of iron and damp earth. She crawled inside, the concrete walls pressing on her from all sides. Her flashlight revealed scratches along the wall, long, deep, frantic. Whoever had been confined here had fought desperately to escape. She felt a pang in her chest. Could it be Daniel or someone else who had suffered before him? At the far end, she saw signs of movement. A small stack of crates shifted as if recently moved. Beneath them, she uncovered a tattered piece of clothing. Her stomach dropped. It was Daniel's. A watch, frayed shirt sleeves, a wallet with his initials. He had been here. He was alive at some point. Then she saw the note pinned to the wall. "Stop looking, or next time it will be you." Fear turned to anger. Someone was trying to intimidate her. Someone wanted her to stop. But Sarah wasn't going to stop. She backed out of the crawl space and retraced her steps through the basement, studying every corner, every shelf, every box. Daniel had left clues for her, deliberately or not, and she would follow them. The next day, Sarah decided to expand her search beyond the house. She traced the names mentioned in Daniel's journals, visited the abandoned warehouses he had documented, and spoke cautiously with people who might know something. But everywhere she went, she encountered walls of silence, suspicious glances, and veiled threats. The network had eyes everywhere. Then she found something crucial, a ledger hidden in a false bottom of a warehouse crate. The pages contain names, dates, and locations, evidence of illegal transactions, blackmail schemes, and disappearances. Daniel had been gathering this to hand over to law enforcement, and whoever controlled this network would do anything to get it back. Sarah felt the weight of the danger pressing down on her. Every step she took, every lead she followed, could expose her to the very people who had taken her husband. She began to notice strange signs. Her tires slashed one night, her phone hacked, and an unmarked van parked near her home. They were watching, always watching. Despite the danger, she pressed on. Using Daniel's notes, she triangulated a possible location where Daniel might be held, an abandoned industrial building on the edge of town, long since abandoned but structurally sound. She memorized the route, planned her entry, and made sure the police were at least aware of her investigation. That night, armed only with a flashlight and sheer determination, Sarah entered the building. The air was thick with dust and decay, the floor littered with broken glass and rusted metal. Somewhere deep inside, she heard muffled sounds, footsteps, groans, whispers. Her pulse raced. She was close. Following the sounds, she discovered a makeshift cell, a room enclosed with metal sheets and a heavy padlock. And inside, her heart almost stopped. Daniel was there, weak, bruised, and terrified, but alive. He looked up as she opened the door, and a faint flicker of hope crossed his eyes. "Sarah," he whispered hoarsely. Tears welled in her eyes. She had found him. Against the odds, she had found him. But their relief was short-lived. The network's enforcers had noticed the intrusion. The sound of boots echoed down the corridor. Sarah knew they only had minutes before confrontation. She quickly freed Daniel, and together they navigated through the shadows, avoiding the searchlights and the patrols. Every step was tense. Every corner could hide a gun, a trap, or a masked figure. Sarah's mind raced with strategies, recalling every hidden passage, every clue Daniel had left behind. Finally, they emerged into the night, breathing the cool air, hearts pounding, but not yet safe. The danger wasn't over. They had escaped the immediate threat, but the network was vast, powerful, and ruthless. Sarah realized that exposing the full truth would be far from simple. Evidence would need to reach authorities, suspects would need to be confronted, and the risk of retaliation would remain high. Still, for the first time in days, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Daniel was alive. The basement had revealed its secrets, terrifying and dark, but now they had a chance to fight back. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the city, the network was watching. They knew she had found Daniel. They would not give up easily. The final confrontation was coming. Sarah and Daniel looked at each other, bruised and exhausted, but united. They had survived the basement's secrets, survived the threats, and survived the terror. But one truth was clear. The nightmare wasn't over. Not yet. They had the evidence, they had each other, and now they had a plan. The night was heavy with tension. Sarah Matthews and Daniel, bruised, exhausted, and terrified, moved cautiously through the abandoned industrial complex. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified in the silence. The building smelled of rust, damp concrete, and decay, a scent that would forever haunt Sarah. Daniel whispered hoarsely, "They'll know we were here soon. We have to move, fast." Sarah nodded, gripping his arm tightly. Their minds raced with strategies, retracing the path they had used to avoid the enforcers. The plan was simple but dangerous. Reach the outskirts of the complex where Sarah had left a signal with the police and escape into the city's maze of alleys and side streets. As they crept through the broken corridors, the sound of approaching boots echoed behind them. Shadows moved along the walls, just out of reach of their flashlight. Sarah's heart pounded. The criminals were close, and any wrong move could mean their end. She whispered, "Daniel, follow my lead. Stick close. We can make it." They darted into a side room, barely visible behind a stack of crates. Through a cracked window, they saw a group of masked men, armed and patrolling, searching systematically. Their presence was methodical, almost clinical. Sarah realized they were dealing with professionals, not just criminals, people trained to find and eliminate threats. "Think fast," she murmured. "We need a distraction." Spotting a loose pile of metal scraps near the wall, she kicked it toward the corridor. The clattering echoed loudly, drawing the attention of two enforcers. They cursed, moving toward the noise. Sarah grabbed Daniel's hand and they slipped through a narrow maintenance passage she had noticed earlier. The air grew colder as they moved, the smell of rust replaced with the faint scent of wet earth. The passage led to an external door, hidden behind overgrown weeds and discarded crates. Sarah tried the handle. It was locked. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She only had seconds before the patrol returned. Then she remembered the small crowbar Daniel had grabbed from the basement stash. With a few swift movements, the lock clicked open. The door creaked as they pushed it, revealing the cool night air. They slipped outside, hearts racing, lungs burning. "Go!" Sarah urged. They ran through the darkness toward the alley where Sarah had arranged to meet the police. Behind them, the masked enforcers realized the escape and gave chase. Gunshots rang out, splintering the quiet night. Sarah's adrenaline surged. She ducked behind trash bins, pulling Daniel with her, moving from shadow to shadow. Finally, blue and red lights flashed in the distance. The police had arrived, responding to Sarah's earlier signal. Officers quickly cordoned off the area, guns drawn, shouting commands. The enforcers hesitated, then retreated, realizing the risk. Breathing heavily, Sarah and Daniel were escorted to safety. They were alive, shaken, but together. Later, at the police station, Daniel recounted his ordeal, the months of investigation, the evidence collected, and the night he had been kidnapped. He described the hidden basement stash, the surveillance cameras, and the crawl space that had almost become his tomb. Sarah handed over the notebooks, memory cards, and ledgers she had found. The police's eyes widened as they scanned the evidence. This was more than just a local crime ring. It was an organized, dangerous network with ties that reached deep into the city's underworld. Detectives immediately began planning coordinated raids. The warehouse Daniel had been held in, the abandoned industrial complex, and other key locations were identified. With Sarah and Daniel's help, they were able to arrest several high-ranking members of the network, seizing weapons, cash, and documents that could be used in court. But the mastermind, the one who had orchestrated Daniel's kidnapping, remained elusive. Sarah knew that this figure was still out there, watching, calculating, waiting for the right moment. She shivered at the thought, realizing that the battle wasn't entirely over. Days passed, and life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Sarah and Daniel repaired their home, rebuilt their lives, and tried to forget the terror that had gripped them. But the basement, the dark heart of their ordeal, remained a stark reminder of how fragile safety could be. One evening, Daniel opened a drawer in the basement, carefully scanning the old shelves. He hesitated, then placed the remaining evidence into a secure police locker. "Some things," he said quietly, "can't stay here. We can't risk it again." Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of relief and lingering dread. They had survived, but the memory of the crawl space, the shadows, the threats, would always remain. Weeks later, the trial began. The criminal network was exposed, their operations dismantled, and many of the perpetrators faced justice. Yet Sarah could not shake the feeling that someone was still watching, even now, hidden in plain sight, waiting for revenge or opportunity. One night, as she and Daniel sat together in their living room, the wind rattled the windows. Sarah glanced at the basement door, then back at Daniel. "We survived," she whispered, trying to believe it. "Yes," he replied, "but the truth, it changes you forever." They held each other, knowing the terror they had endured had bonded them more tightly than ever. And yet the basement remained, a silent witness to the darkness that had invaded their lives. Even as they tried to move forward, Sarah understood one thing clearly. Some secrets, once uncovered, never truly fade, and some threats, once faced, never truly disappear. The house was safe again, Daniel was home, justice had been served, at least in part, but as the night deepened and shadows crept along the walls, Sarah couldn't help but glance at the basement one last time. The darkness within remained, and somewhere in that darkness, the story was not quite finished.